What needs to be done to lift an economy in the grips of a slowdown? The first step, importantly, is to recognize that there is a problem. Then review decisions made that may have worsened the situation. And finally, put a roadmap in place to make structural changes. The Finance Minister Nirmala Sitharaman ticked all three boxes today, nearly 50 days after her maiden budget cast a pall of gloom on the Indian economy. In the slew of announcements we heard this evening, there are three broad themes. One, improving sentiment, a message that the government is willing to walk back from decisions that hurt. This was done through clarifications that there will be no criminal liability on promoters that don't fulfill CSR norms and a rollback on a surcharge on foreign portfolio investors, among other things. Second, the message that the government will walk the talk. The economy boosters include elements of the government reducing the weight for GST refunds from MSMEs, a big transfer of 70,000 crore rupees for bank recapitalization, and the announcement that government offices will start buying new vehicles to replace old ones, a message for Motown. And thirdly, the assurance that the process is ongoing. There will be 2 more press conferences where more announcements can be expected as early as next week. So are these measures just what the doctor ordered, and what else is needed? To speak on this, I am joined this evening by Shobhana Kamineni, Executive Vice Chairperson of Apollo Hospitals, Sadanand Dhume, Resident Fellow at American Enterprises, R. Gopalan, former Finance Secretary, and N.R. Bhanumurthy, Professor at NIPFP. Quick reminder, at 9:30 p.m. I will also be speaking to former Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog, Arvind Panagriya. Let's begin by speaking with Shobhana Kamineni. The biggest and loudest voices were coming from corporate India, that there was a slowdown, consumption had dropped, money was not circulating in the system, the NPA crisis has made it worse. I'm not saying everything's changed after that press conference, but has the mood changed this evening, ma'am?
I would give a resounding thumbs up to that. That if India Inc. Doesn't really stand up and cheer for what took place today, it was almost like a mini budget. That and the messages were sharp, they were clear, they addressed the concerns that we have been talking about. So it was like she was actually talking to her. I had done an interview earlier. So many of those critical points were addressed, and she said, I'm going to do it in 6 buckets, and these are the way, these silos that she spoke about. And then she had this, each one, and you could see that it was that this is a government that listened, and that's all that India looks for, and I think or any industrialist, that people are there with you and they're looking to help solve. And I don't think there's anything to stop this economy from, and she said, don't fool yourself for 1 minute. We are still the fastest growing economy in the world. And I think that I would like to end by saying that the Narendra Modi government walks the talk. They put through so many policies in this parliamentary session. They did those policies, and then after that, they were not afraid to actually listen and fix some of those that needed to be fixed. And I think that this is stunning. And I don't think any time in history that we've ever seen a government that is so responsive. So now it's up to us to step up.
Professor Bhanumurthy, do you agree with that? Of course, a lot of messages for corporate India in the last 48 hours that don't keep crying about your problems, introspect on what's wrong and what's not. But a quick review of what has been announced today, the broad outlines of it, and what needs to be done next.
Yeah, I think what the finance minister has done today should improve the sentiment in the overall economy, not just in the industrial sector. You are right, for the past 48 hours, there were a lot of confusing signals coming from government agencies where you had a different view between the Niti Aayog as well as the finance ministry. And I think the finance minister's statement today should actually improve the confidence in the overall economy going forward. and particularly I am much more happy. I think I was one of the guys who were arguing for front loading of capitalization of banks, and there is a statement regarding that, but we need to wait and see how and when they are going to really front load. And I think this is something that has been is dragging the economy for quite some time. The banking sector was one thing, and today's decision to front load the 70,000 crore would certainly boost the overall sentiments, and I think that also should improve the transmission mechanism that both RBI and Finance Ministry was looking forward. But at the same time, they seems to have created a little bit of uncertainty. Now they say that they are going to come back and have some 2 more announcements.
Yeah.
Now the whole market would be looking forward to what are those announcements and how that is going to impact some of the sectors. To me, I think today's statements are really very, very positive in a sense.
Sadanand, how do you read this situation? You've been quite vocal in your view of the handling or mishandling of the economy by the current government in the last few months, especially from the beginning of term 2, because there is a massive opportunity here with the kind of mandate this government enjoys. Do you think at least the message that they're listening and they're willing to fix the situation has come across today?
Look, let me start with the sort of glass half full part, right? I would say that any time that a government seems to take on board concerns and makes an attempt to address them publicly, that's always something we should welcome and encourage, right? I've never understood this weird habit we have in India of attacking governments and accusing ministers of U-turns and so on. We should just be looking at the policy outcome, right? And to the degree that the government has done things that has reversed some of its earlier bad decisions, that should be welcome, and the process itself should certainly be most welcome. I'm not particularly overwhelmed by what has been announced. I think that what seems to be happening, and I think that the sort of government hasn't fully woken up to this, is that the way India is perceived outside of India is changing. Now, it's one thing to sort of, to get, Indian businessmen to claim that this is the greatest government ever in the history of mankind. But, the fact is that there is a, larger international context. We have the sort of, this downturn of the US-China trade relationship. You have a lot of, volatility and instability.
Yeah.
And in that context, the opportunity that seems to have been missed so far is the idea of presenting India as a stable, open, business-friendly environment that people can shift to. Now, what I see the finance minister doing right now is damage control. Damage control is welcome. But I think the real test is going to lie in the weeks ahead. Is she able to put out a reform agenda that is genuinely a deep structural reform agenda, or are we just looking at band-aids to undo some of the damage that has been done?
Okay, I saw Shobhana Kamireni wanted to come in, so I will come to you to respond. Yes, ma'am.
So, first of all, he talks about the government that is doing band-aids when they put huge policy and behind it, they're trying to correct this, something and get the fastest growing economy to move faster, create jobs. And on top of that, we're being preached to or talked down as, these industrialists that just want to placate the government. What is that? We really are sitting here in India, and every day we're creating jobs. Every day we're moving living in this environment, not in the United States, where I, by the way, grew up in my early years. So we've committed to this country, and we think this is the best place in the world to grow and to thrive. So why are we being, talked down to like that?
Okay, one response from Sadanand and then we'll move on. Yeah, one response from Sadanand and then we'll move on.
I'm not talking down to anybody. My apologies if that's how Ms. Kamineni construed it.
Yeah.
My simple point is that there is a global context to this discussion. That's what I'm trying to bring to it. I'm not talking down to you. I'm a huge fan of Indian business. I have batted for Indian business. Sometimes I've batted for Indian business more vocally. Because I'm in a position to, right? So that's my only point. I don't think we have a disagreement.
Thank you.
Okay, let me go to R. Gopalan. Let me go to R. Gopalan. And always on this show, all views are welcome. It's important to have all views to really come to a well-rounded set of opinions for takeaway for our viewers. Mr. Gopalan, the question I want to ask you is a very specific one, and I'm not saying it's a U-turn. It is actually, in fact, a good thing, like Sadanand said, that the government listens to what went wrong. 50 days between the budget announcements and some walkbacks on FPI surcharge, etc. What does it display to you in terms of coming to grips with what is actually going on? Is there a sense that that cognizance has increased now within government?
Okay, I would say that there were three things I could take away from this announcement today. First, government is listening, is eager to listen. That's a good thing, and wants to listen continuously and not in discrete periods of time. Second, there is an inclination, if there has been some measures taken in the past are not very encouraging, or have come for great criticism, despite the goodness or the badness of it, the government is willing to consider and then indicate that they are looking into the market. And third, ease of doing business is something which is very much evident in today's announcement on a variety of things to MSMEs and various other people. I think these are the three big takeaways I have from today's announcement. I also am eagerly awaiting for the next two sets of announcements which are going to come in the next week. I think this is a good beginning. That's what I would say.
Focus to what we can hope to see happening next week, because as you know, the finance minister has indicated, and we know that a broader, bigger problem of this magnitude is not going to be fixed with one set of slew of announcements. A lot is going to now be left to execution, transmission, pass-through, etc. What are the steps forward you see, Mr. Bhanumurthy, that need to be looked at?
I think that would be very difficult to predict at this stage.
Not what she will do.
Is that,
not what she will do.
They need to really.
Not what she will do. What you think should be done.
Okay. Yeah. See, one of the things that I've been arguing is that the government should come out with some kind of incentives for increasing savings. Now, whether they do it as part of the fiscal policy, or they are going to come back with some kind of instruments that we had in the past. So there should be some measures that they need, that helps in reviving the overall savings in the economy. And we should not forget that I think although the economic survey argued that investment kind of growth, but in my view I think it is the savings led investment growth hypothesis that holds well in this country. So on the one hand we are seeing that RBI is trying to cut the interest rates on a continuous basis. Now on the other hand there is some kind of there is no incentive for the domestic savings. So in that sense I think the finance minister should really come out with some measures that would really revive the savings in the country and which will help in reviving the investments. Until unless they do that, we are not going to see any kind of revival in the investments.
Okay, Ms. Kamineni, I want to come to the question of sector specific sort of packages. Now there has been a very strong argument, and Mr. Arvind Panagria is one of them who's made that argument. Viewers will hear from him later in the show, saying that there should be no SOPs to specific sectors. Let them compete in a marketplace. There has been some sort of a olive branch to the auto sector, though if rate cuts happen or not will be left to the GST Council. Do you think that there is a special intensive care needed for certain vulnerable sectors, auto, real estate, etc., or should there be more focus here on structural changes?
I think the auto part is also a structural change, because when you're talking about, a lot of the reason for the stress is that all the auto, we're moving from BS4 to BS6, we're leapfrogging, and then we're thinking through electric and mobility and all those other solutions. So while you're doing it, this is a sector that employs, that gives great jobs, that actually is a growth sector in manufacturing and does a huge amount of exports. So I do think that that the government had its heart in the right place when in whatever they've done for the auto sector, and this scrappage bill is something that the US has used very effectively. So I think the auto sector, which is huge job leading, it's good. And having said that, I do believe that there are other sectors that require this kind of thrust and push, because those find sectors that are huge job creators, because all this will come back into the economy. And so there's no country in the world that did not give certain incentives to critical industries to help it further its economic agenda. So I'm for these things.
Okay, I would also come to a point that, Sadanand raised a little earlier, and I'll come to you, Mr. R. Gopalan, on it. That the point is actually an important one, that these are good measures to help India right now, but we're in a global context when things are beginning to look dismal. We're seeing what's happening with a slew of tweets that the US President Donald Trump has put out. We know that major world economies are perhaps staring at a recession. Do you think there needs to be now here on more focus on keeping India safe in whatever circumstances are yet to come on a global economy scale?
Tanya, you are asking me?
Yes, Mr. Gopalan, that question's for you.
Yeah, okay. You see, the issue there is that, we have to be export competitive, which there are any number of measures that are waiting to be taken, which seriously we will have to consider as how to make the entire export sector competitive. There is a structural issue involved there which we need to address, whether it is a land or capital or any other things which we are looking at. We need to look at labor, we need to look at how those structural issues can be looked at. Unless we are able to ensure our export becomes competitive across the sectors, manufacturing cannot improve, and therefore we will not be in a position to ensure that despite competition from other countries, we should be in a position to maintain our market share, trade share, and improve upon it. There are other issues which are there, which need to be looked at. If there is going to be a problem of trade war which has been taking place at this point in time, we should have calibrated it in which areas we could have taken advantage of and then try to work on it. There, obviously, it is in addition to how do you make the export sector, area totally competitive. Third, we have a problem of liquidity. Now, let us look at the liquidity problem. The system liquidity is very much there, but the liquidity at various sectoral levels is not there. And despite the measures which are announced today, I am not very sure whether liquidity is going to get into those sectors which are crying for it. Now, lastly, the rural incomes and rural wages are down. How to ensure that credit reaches the unorganized sector which has been decimated badly thanks to the demonetization and the GST introduction, which is good, but then it coming successively that had sapped the entire structure of the unorganized sector. How are we going to attend to that sector? These are some of the issues which are they can't be taken in a hurry, but then I hope the government would have thought about it, and the next 2 installments which the minister is going to come up with, there will be enough announcements to see how these kind of things can be handled.
Sadanand, more on the overall perspective, before this press conference, and I don't know what the commentary and narrative will be next, but there has been an undercurrent and a sense that after sweeping back to power with such a huge mandate, this government is focused more on large welfare schemes, populist reforms, and maybe the economy has slipped in the list of priorities. Do you think at the very least that impression has been fixed, or an attempt has been made to fix that impression?
I don't think the economy can ever, slip in terms of priorities. It's just like, how do you approach the economy, right? And I think what we've seen over the past several years is a kind of taking business, but particularly big business, for granted. And there has been sort of, I would say that they've done some things on ease of doing business and so on. But if you look at, for example, their taxation policies, there's been an extreme sort of punitive edge, right? We saw this most recently in their raising these taxes. You see how even relatively low-level tax authorities have been given punitive and quite draconian powers. And so there's been a sense of, at least if not in terms of numbers, but in terms of spirit, I think sort of, returning to almost a mindset where government knows best. And I think getting over that mindset is going to be a huge challenge, simply because, the fact is that this is the strongest government India has seen in more than 30 years. And it's much more tricky for a strong government to learn the art of the light touch. And that's something that, that to me is what we're grappling with. And I would like to see, and those sort of, there were many announcements today by the finance minister, but you could almost separate those philosophically between announcements which are essentially saying, look, I'm going to get the government to perform better. I'll turn around your loan in 30 days or whatever, right?
Yeah,
And there's
refunds,
another
yeah.
set of announcements which are really about, look, I want to allow the invisible hand of the market to play a greater role. And I think that's just one way of assessing it. I would like to just see India move much more towards structural reforms that increase the role of the invisible hand in the economy, rather than focus largely on getting government to do things better, because we've seen in the past that that is actually much easier to say and much harder to deliver.
Well, absolutely. The big challenge right now is to actually move sentiment, which goes beyond industry being happy and corporate India being happy. And we've reflected a load of those voices on ET Now all this evening. But is the common man going to feel more confident to be able to spend, make more purchases, and really kickstart the economy once again, or increase its speed once again? We'll have to wait and see. I want to thank all of you for joining us on this first leg of our conversation on the India development debate. Of course, with the promise that we will be watching carefully for what comes next. But after the break, I'm speaking to a very special guest, Arvind Panagria, the former Vice Chairman of the Niti Aayog, is joining me. He's also a top economist, and we're going to take his view on the measures announced today and what's needed next.